Welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Will, and today I want to talk to you guys about a super important endgame system that New World themselves actually addressed a few days ago. This is a very big, important thing for you to understand as you are encroaching on level 60 and while you're level 60 as is. I keep seeing so many people talking about this is my first MMO, this is my first MMO, and this is in general how it works in a lot of different MMOs. At max level, you're focusing on getting better gear score items. Games that like this that actually work on gear score, so like Destiny's a big one, increasing gear score that way. So you want to focus on this high watermark system as you are getting close to level 60 and beyond that. So just quickly cover a couple of things here. We're going to focus largely on like these three paragraphs to give you the most information, but it does start out by like saying as you're leveling, you will get gear that naturally is relative to your level. So the more you level, the higher your gear is. So as you go from 20 to 25, you're more likely to see gear around 25 to 30. It continues to do that all the way up to level 60. So once you hit level 60, you start working on what's called your high watermark. So you can't get gear above level 60 because that's the highest level in the game, but you can start getting your gear score up. So what I'm talking about that, just to get a good visual here, is your weapon. So for example, this hatchet here is a level 51 hatchet, but my gear score for this weapon is level 478. So once I hit level 60, my weapons will all be level 60. All my gear will be level 60. I can't get better level gear that will naturally progress my gear score. I have to focus on specific items that will only increase my gear score. Your high watermark will naturally start to increase your gear score as you collect more of those items. So as it talks about here down in the next paragraph, when you reach the level cap of 60, you gain an upper gear score limit, which is your high watermark, on drops that gradually increase as more powerful drops appear to you. So your high watermark will increase as you get more and more drops of that type of item. This upper limit is per item type. For armor, it's based on the slot, so whether it's head or chest or your necklaces or your boots, whatever it might be. As more head pieces drop, you'll start to increase your high watermark. As more leg pieces drop, you'll start to increase your leg drop for high watermark. And then for weapons, it's independent weapons. So the more swords you get, the higher your high watermark is. The more hammers, the more the stronger your hammers become. It is per item basis. So getting a super strong sword, let's say you get like a 585 sword, it will not all of a sudden all your weapons are 585s, just your swords. Same thing with the things. Head armor, just the head will increase if you get a super high gear piece head armor, will not affect any of the rest of your gear pieces. So you need to farm these kind of independently. It gives you something to work towards end game. It can be a little frustrating. I ran into this in the beta a little bit where I kept getting the same gear pieces. So I keep saying helmet because first of all, that's the first thing it talks about here. But it's also a problem I ran into where I kept getting helmets. Like for my gear drops, I was getting helmets and gauntlets and helmets and gauntlets. And like, so my high watermark was great on those, but my chest and everything else were still garbage. They were like 30, 40 gear score behind. It was very frustrating, but it is something that you can run into. So you got to keep in mind that you are leveling, you are increasing your gear score on a per item basis. It does specify that only drops will affect this. So chests, ground loot, things like that will affect your high watermark. Crafting items or buying items will not increase your high watermark, but it does state here that buying items or crafting them can still give you that edge in power and performance to help you farm that stuff better. So if you find a sword that's like super awesome, way higher than your high watermark, you can still buy it and equip it and use it. It just won't affect your gear score for your swords. And then it says, and then this is a really important thing to keep in mind because this will dictate exactly how you go about increasing your high watermark. It states that not all things are created equal in terms of increasing your high watermark. While you always have a small chance to see a high watermark increase from defeating level 60 plus creatures or searching a container in a level 60 plus landmark, each level beyond 60 has a soft upper limit. So killing a level 61, for example, is more likely to give you a high watermark increase than level 60, and a 62 more than that, a 63 even more than that. And then it talks about specifically level 64 enemies are capable of reliably dropping gear up to gear score 600. Keeping in mind that the level cap in the game is 60, a little difficult to deal with. So you're going to have to kind of work on these guys. It's highly recommended that you take 2 or 3 buddies or grab some people out of your faction group and you go farm these zones together to efficiently up your gear score, making sure everyone's getting a fair amount of hits in so they can get credit for the kills as well. It does state that this system, and this is another very, very important thing to keep in mind because this is going to it's going to link into how you, in fact, do this. So this system isn't fully random either. Each time you defeat a level 60 plus enemy and don't receive a gear item that has increased your high watermark type, you're slightly more likely to see an increase the next time. So this is a compounding situation. You get a helmet, you get a helmet, you get a helmet, you get a helmet. None of these are increasing your high watermark. You're more and more likely each successive time to get an increase in your high watermark. Additionally, some enemies, such as those found in elite landmarks and expeditions, so as I mentioned before, going into these high-level zones and farming with teammates, you want to take them into these elite landmarks where there's just gold enemies everywhere and farm up those mobs, have a higher base chance of dropping items that increase your high water mark versus just fighting normal higher level creatures. And this says level 60 plus named enemies are even more likely to drop high water mark increased items. So this is really likely. And then this does compound too. So a level 63 plus, a level 63 named enemy is more likely to drop it than a level 62 named enemy. But all of them are much more likely to drop than their base counterparts. And then expeditions and bosses are the best way to farm high watermark to increase your gear score, because expedition bosses will always drop high watermark increases, as well as the fact that there's a lot of elite mobs inside of dungeons. You're already there with a group of people, and you're able to kind of farm these more efficiently. You will run into a problem though, because the fact that tuning orbs are a problem, which they talk about down here. Tuning orbs is a big issue you run into because they're craftable only, and they are bind on creation basically. Once you pick up that item, it is bound to you, so you can't sell them or trade them or give them to friends. You can't do any of that kind of stuff. It does say some of you may feel that competing for drops against powerful enemies, so a lot of these named enemies specifically, is going to be a pain getting in hits. So it does specify that the more people are attacking the same enemy, there's a smaller chance that those groups will see drops. So the more and more people attacking it, the less likely they are to get a drop in general, to kind of help mitigate just 30 people attacking the same mob and causing issues. If you want to increase your chances of getting high watermark increases in a more controlled environment, expeditions are a great way. So as I mentioned, expeditions talks about the Garden of Genesis and Lazarus instrumentally are full instrumentality. As soon as I said it, I realized it was wrong. Are full of elite monsters to fight, and those bosses guarantee that you'll see an increase in your drops. Keeping in mind that bosses can drop 4, 5, 6 pieces of gear too. So if those are 4, 5, 6 independent pieces of gear, that's a lot of increase you're getting. And then it does talk about the tuning orb issue, that they are craftable only, they're very expensive and difficult to craft, and that because they're untradeable, that's the only way to get them. They are working on changing the crafting requirements for tuning orbs. They said in November they'll have an update, so keep your eyes peeled this month to see if that helps. Otherwise, going into these elite zones, going into like kind of the overworld dungeons is kind of what I call them. Going into those overworld dungeons and farming up those mobs is going to be your best way to focus on getting your high watermark up with a group of friends. Again, if you're a solo player, you don't have a lot of people to play with, you can go do this on your own. As long as you're fighting mobs above level 60, you'll have chances of dropping that. Again, exponential. So you're going to get higher and higher chances every time you see an item that's not better than what you have that's from that specific set. So a helmet or a sword or a hatchet or boots or whatever it might be. You'll eventually get better and better gear. It's going to be slower and more time consuming, but it puts you in a situation where you can do this regardless of needing to count on other people. It's really important, especially when you hit level 60, to group up with your faction. Not even make some friends necessarily, but just have some people you can rely on from your faction to kind of do stuff with. And, it'd be cool to kind of, form a friendship over time with them. But just kind of go in your faction, say, hey, looking to go to this elite zone, farm some high watermark. Who's in? And then, 4, 5, 6 people might jump in and go with you. So that's it for the video, guys. Breaking it down for you, giving you a good example of how all this works. Kind of explain the difference between your level and your gear score is super important to understand. And then just making sure that you find a good system that you think you'll enjoy to kind of increase your high watermark. You can get up to level 600 high watermark, so you want to kind of get focus on grinding up to that 600 point once you hit level 60. Just like any other MMO, really, once you hit max level, it's all about your gear score, increasing your gear score. It's no different than it is in WoW or Final Fantasy or even like Destiny, for example. So if you guys like the video, I'd really appreciate a like and subscribe. I'm really focusing on a lot of metrics lately, trying to see what kind of videos are really working well for me. So a participation from you guys will really help a lot. I'm trying to make sure I keep direction with my channel and figure out exactly how I want to do this, and making sure the way I'm explaining my content is actually useful for you guys. I'm not wasting everybody's time. So liking and commenting, subscribing if you want more content like this would be super appreciated, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.